Come in, my child. We mustn't lurk in doorways. It's rude. One might question your upbringing.
Hi there. How you sleeping? Good? Gentlemen, listen up, y'all. Here's the new plan. You're gonna start a riot, and we're gonna walk out the front door.
Hey, man. I know guys on crack that makes more sense than you.
Really? Then let me put it to you this way, cuz. Yeah. I don't know how to be. No crib on MTV. God only knows. Got my mini-me in the GP. See how it goes. Evil's all that I see. You ask me my name? G to the Rizzo, E to the Bizzo, I to the Lizzo. I'm a crazy. You all knew that. Austin caught me in the first act. It's all backwards. What's with that? So I'll make a prophecy from the dog to the mini-me. Give me an Escalade, a two-way bling-bling on eBay. Domino. Yeah. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it. Uh-huh. It's for all my homies in Bruges. Cristal, my moto, a couple of bee hutches. Why not? I got a buster move, dropping buster groove, feeling fine. Got an evil crew, gold member crew, lick my 9. Till then I'll on my butt, brains out, put on call and splooge in your app, that's all. For shizzle my nizzle, y'all.
The sound of the cannon.
Attention! On the count of 3. 1.
So it begins.
Such a crick in the neck!
Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice.
It's showtime.
Everybody comfortable?
Yeah.
Get your motherfucking ass up when I'm talking.
And here we go.
Hello again. welcome. There's a lot of things happening right now. I did not know a Blue Beetle trailer had dropped until like 5 minutes ago. Like, what? But this movie apparently is still coming out this year. Yeah, I almost forgot. For those that don't know, Blue Beetle is a he's not the original Blue Beetle, by the way. This is the second guy to take on the mantle. There was a guy named Ted Kord before. This is the second Blue Beetle, Jaime Reyes. He's of Hispanic origin. So obviously they're gonna go with that version and not the original, the white guy. Yeah. But I still like Blue Beetle, especially when he's paired with Booster Gold. Like they make a great pair. But the majority of people in the world have never heard of this character. So, this might be another Black Adam situation where people go in there and they're like, okay, I guess This is a new superhero. Okay, cool. I feel like they should have introduced him in something else, like with a more popular hero at first, but it could be good. We'll see. I decided I'm going to react to this trailer live. I have not seen it yet. We shall see how this goes. Let me see. Give me a sec. Share.
Excuse me, Mr. Reyes? You finished scraping the gum off that lounger or what?
Oh, yeah, it's the guy from Cobra Kai playing him, who I really like. Cholo. I forget his last name, but I know his first name's Cholo.
Everything right now feels so out of reach.
You always land on your feet, bro. You're Jaime.
They don't get out much. I just want to rap. Jenny?
Guard that with your life, but do not open it. You went in to get us jobs, and all you brought back was a hamburger?
Okay, I don't think it's a burger.
You haven't looked?
Oh, look, George Lopez. I didn't know he was in this. It's the Scarab. Yeah, that's how he gets the suit, the blue Scarab.
What the hell is that?
How did you get it to do that?
I think he likes me.
Jaime.
This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want.
Well, I like that they got the suit to look exactly like it was.
Okay, it's gonna be okay. Space.
Re-entry systems ready.
Wait, no. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. This ain't what you want. Oh. What is going on? I just want to rock.
It's called the Scarab. It's some
I didn't even know this was coming out this summer.
kind of world-destroying weapon. It's designed to protect its host.
This ain't what you want.
Sometimes it does what you want, and sometimes it doesn't.
I think I cut a bus in half.
The Scarab chose you, but it belongs to me.
That love you feel for your family makes you weak.
I just want to rock. You won't kill my dog, standing my money all on my side.
The universe has sent you a gift, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do with it.
That's my mom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Whatever you can imagine, I can create.
Let's party.
Nice choice.
I just want to rap.
Whoa, it's like Batman stuff. Batman's a fascist.
I just want to rap.
Oh no. Oh no. You could have done without that line, really. Oh shit. Calling Batman a fascist in your major motion picture, that's not a good move, man. Batman has a huge fan base, myself included. This is not a good move. Oh, frick. See, I was on board up until that line. See, there's a line in the Batman movie too that kind of takes you out of it for a minute because it dates the movie. You know, you can tell that it's got a Wokie's hands all over it. Because what's his name that made the Batman? He did a great job on the Planet of the Apes movies, but he is a disciple of Jar Jar Abrams. Let's be real. So he's all in on identity politics and shit. Like no more white comfort, all that garbage that they spew. This just seems like it's going to be more of that identity politics crap. Like we'll put down the white superheroes to prop up the other superheroes. It's like this is getting old already. This is getting tired. It looks like it might be a fun adventure movie, but again, like, yeah, you just, man, they can't help themselves. They can't just let the things stand on their own. It sucks. Because I like these characters. What, man, why do they keep giving these projects to these kind of people that are just gonna do shit like that? That's stupid. Shooting themselves in the foot. I saw see, what brought my attention to this trailer was I saw As Heel versus Babyface put out a video saying, what did it say? Blue Beetle trailer, calls out, this is Batman or something. I was like, wait, what? Okay, I gotta watch this and see what they say. And then, okay. Frick. Oh well. Now that we've got that garbage out of the way. Yeah, I probably won't see that. I wasn't planning on seeing all these movies anyway because, you know, the James Gunn, Henry Cavill situation, they pissed me off when they got rid of him. But he's keeping everyone he wants around. Yeah, that's very hypocritical. I hate it. So I'm not supporting them. If I see any of these movies, it's gonna be somebody else paying for it. Or on the high seas, of course. Let's see, what else was oh yeah. Moving on to okay, here's what we're going to I was gonna get into the Disney stuff first, like the meeting, but I just want to get this out of the way. Yeah, the Mandalorian stuff. Because as predicted, it's had a huge drop off in viewership. The Nielsen ratings have come out, and the drop is nearly 40%. Man. Oh, yeah, Jedi Survivor. My brother's excited about the game. I just saw that ad. My brother wants to get it, but I'm not even interested anymore in Star Wars. Like any of the freaking games, movies, shows, even the books. I used to collect the books and read them all the time, but Disney has just soured me on Star Wars. It's sad. I see this picture here, and I just see something else that Star Wars has ripped off, like Disney has ripped off. I mean, this is clearly a Swamp Thing ripoff. Look at this guy. He's entirely made of moss and grass and shit and stuff out of the swamp. And his eyes are red, just like Swamp Thing. His nose, same. This is supposed to be like a pirate, I guess, in the show. I haven't been watching since season 2. Like, after they fired Gina Carano, I just canceled my Disney Plus, and I've only watched things on the high seas. Like I watched Book of Boba Fett, hated it, and then Kenobi was even worse. Like I think that did the most damage to Star Wars altogether, like continuity wise and character wise. The Mandalorian Nielsen ratings have seen a big drop of nearly 40% from the season 2 finale to the season 3 premiere. In December 2020, the week when the season 2 finale of The Mandalorian was released, December 14th through 20th, the show secured the top spot on the Nielsen Ratings weekly US streaming chart with 1.34 billion minutes viewed, which marked the first time a non-Netflix show took the top spot. However, it's a different story for the start of The Mandalorian Season 3, as the first episode that debuted on March 1st during the week of February 27th through March 5th, 2023, The Mandalorian only has 823 billion minutes viewed, which is a drop of 38.5% in minutes viewed. Worth a mention is that the ratings aren't just for one single episode and take into account all the available episodes viewed. So back at the season 2 finale in December 2020, more people could have been watching additional episodes compared to the start of season 3. Yeah, they kind of fudged the numbers, like, well, they propped them up with Andor. Well, they couldn't even hide that Andor wasn't getting the views. Like, but before that, like Book of Boba Fett, they were trying to say, this many people watched it, but it was over like all the days. Like it wasn't just one day. That's how they try to get their numbers up. Like that's how they try to prop them up is by saying like we got this many. But yeah, take into account how many days they're talking about. However, the season 2 numbers saw The Mandalorian average around 1 billion minutes viewed each week, with the season 2 premiere week having 1.032 billion minutes viewed. So we see there is some kind of decline by at least around 20%. Related, Damon Lindelof exits Star Wars. Yeah, him and several freaking creators. Are the Mandalorian ratings cause for concern? Yes. The short answer is yes. There will be a cause for concern if the minutes viewed don't increase, or even decrease for The Mandalorian Season 3 in subsequent weeks. Look for next week's Nielsen ratings numbers for more, which is something suggested by various insiders and scoopers who have basically said the ratings are a disaster. Yes, they are. Samba TV actually reports the Mandalorian Season 3 premiere was watched by more households than the Season 2 finale, 1.6 million to 1.1 million. So again, we'll have to see what the Nielsen ratings report in the coming weeks for a better picture, but so far, the Season 3 Nielsen numbers are off compared to Season 2. It has been over 2 years since The Mandalorian Season 2 aired, and fans have been put off by The Book of Boba Fett, which was terrible, save for those 2 Luke episodes. No, that was even terrible too, because first of all, he looks awful, and his actions do not make sense. Like, you getting a baby to decide his future. Like, you gonna stay with me or go with him? He just makes him go by himself. Like R2 takes him in the X-wing. Oh, it was stupid. Obi-Wan was mediocre at best, and people tuned out Andor. It's a good show. Just stick with it. This article writer is desperate for people to watch Andor. It's like, no, nobody gives a shit about this character. So maybe fatigue is setting. Fatigue of poor quality, that is. Yes, exactly. There's no such thing as Star Wars fatigue. It's bad Star Wars fatigue we're feeling. And, same thing with comic book movies. It's not comic book movie fatigue. It's bad comic book movie fatigue. We've been getting fed crap the last few months, years, and people are just tired of it. And they're seeking entertainment elsewhere. The Mandalorian Season 3 premiere episode also happens to be the lowest rated on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb. Yes, because a lot of the characters are making choices, I hear, that just do not make sense. And the story is just, taken off in a totally different direction than people expected, like people were led to believe it would be. It's like they're just, you know what? I'm getting the funny feeling that they're just making shit up as they go along. What do you think? Disney CEO Bob Iger has said he is. Oh, by the way, part of that is because they fired Gina Carano. Like, she was going to be a big part of their content moving forward. With the Rangers of the New Republic and other spinoffs, and then she got shit canned. So thanks, Disney. You fucking suck. Disney CEO Bob Iger has said he is taking a careful look at Star Wars, so there is obviously something wrong. And it has been reported Disney ordered Lucasfilm to cancel a planned Indiana Jones series to concentrate on fixing Star Wars. And even that if the head of Lucasfilm, Kathleen Kennedy, oh, it's too late for that. It's much too late for that. Like, Star Wars was Han, Luke, and Leia, their story, mostly. And Obi-Wan, Anakin. You fucked up all those characters. Like, it's too late to fix that. They're going to eventually remake the original trilogy, I'm sure, and the prequels and everything to try and save this IP, but they've already done the damage. Like, you've driven off most of the hardcore fans, people that have been following it for decades. And these new fans are very fickle. Like, you piss them off and they're gone. Like, it's or you just bore them and they're gone. Like I said, they're fickle. Any new thing that comes out, they're all excited, and then they just drop it like there was a new toy that they got tired of within 5 minutes. The same things happen with Marvel. People are getting bored of it. People are starting to think it's stupid, which it is now. So yeah, if the head of this, I don't know if this is true or not, but if she doesn't get a new Star Wars movie released soon, it has been 4 years, she will be removed from her position. That's a rumor going around, which I don't know if that's true. She should have been canned a long time ago, just for all the mistakes she's made since the beginning. But no, she obviously has some kind of pull, or she would have been gone. Star Wars Celebration Europe takes place next week, where new announcements are expected with further information on their upcoming shows, including Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, and The Acolyte. Yeah, this is a disaster. Oh my god. What has happened to Star Wars?
All right, that's it. Dishonor. Dishonor on your whole family. Make a note of this. Dishonor on you. Dishonor on your cow.
Dishonor on you, Disney. Dishonor. The dis in dishonor stands for Disney. Fucking hell. It pisses me off more to think about it. But let's go back. I'm going to my watch later playlist because there are a couple of videos I wanted to react to regarding the whole Disney shareholder meeting. Okay, okay, yeah, this one's from 4 days ago. Apparently their stock rose. I don't know how that's possible, but we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. Let me share. And we'll see what the reasoning behind that is.
We are watching shares of Disney this morning. Shares up a little more than 1%. The company's first round of layoffs
1%.
are underway. Let's get a closer look at CEO
Still
Bob
under
Iger's strategy
100.
ahead of Monday's shareholder meeting. Yahoo Finance's Ali Canal joins us. Now, shareholder meetings do tend to be a rather friendly affair, typically. I wonder what this one's going to be like and what he's going to say to them.
I know, me too. And this is very anticipated. Iger, he came back to the company end of November, and already he's enacted some pretty serious, layoffs at the company. You mentioned 7,000 jobs are going to be eliminated by this summer. That's going to happen in 3 rounds. The first round is underway this week. Second round will be the
She
largest.
looks super happy about it too.
Largest in April, and then the third round right before the summer. Now, as part of this first round,
I'm gonna start looking for new jobs, you guys.
This week, we saw Disney dissolve its metaverse division, along with the exit of Isaac Perlmutter, who was the chairman of Marvel Entertainment. This is separate from Marvel Studios. Marvel Entertainment, responsible for consumer products, comic book publishing. So layoffs, a clear part of Iger's strategy. Bob Iger has stressed that he wants to get this company back on track. He wants to make sure.
So entertainment, most of it streaming media operations, includes TV network and streaming devices, ESPN, parks experiences, and products.
That Disney Plus can
3
hit
divisions.
its profitability target by 2024. And on the topic of streaming, Iger has made it clear that he is a fan of differentiated content, not general entertainment, which has suggested that Hulu might be on the chopping block. This is a
Oh, that would be a mistake to get rid of Hulu. Like this, a lot of people like Hulu because it's more adult content. You can't. Disney has. I think they've fared better partnering with Hulu than they would have otherwise. If they get rid of it, then it's just going to be more kid friendly, quote unquote. I know Disney's not as kid friendly as they used to be, but yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's targeted towards kids. It might be a bad move.
Return from what we saw in the past when everyone largely thought Disney would buy out Comcast shares in Hulu. Disney currently owns 2/3 of the company, Comcast controlling the rest. But now it seems like Iger might want to do away with Hulu completely. Maguire analyst Tim Nolan was out with a new note this week saying that Hulu's future might actually be tied.
Look at that subscriber count. They got more subscribers on Hulu than ESPN Plus. Like, and ESPN is huge. That'll be just a bad move.
To ESPN's future and Iger's desire to make ESPN Plus a full over-the-top platform. So perhaps taking that money from a Hulu sale and dumping that into ESPN. Iger has made it clear that he is a fan of ESPN. He restructured the business into 3 different divisions: entertainment, ESPN, and park. So when the next earnings reports come out, we will see subscriber numbers. We will see revenue for all those 3 divisions. So, you know, a lot of questions on the table heading into this shareholder meeting, but so far investors seem confident in Bob Iger's plan. The stock is up more than 5% since he took over the company and up more than 12% year to date. So we'll see if Bob Iger can keep up this momentum, but Wall Street clearly loves him.
And then another kind of Disney surrounding story, the latest on Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' attempt to gain control of Walt Disney World's governing board in Florida. A little bit of a...
Okay, first of all, Disney's the ones trying to gain control of Florida. He's just taking back control that they've gained like over the years. They've had their own little country, basically. They've been running right there. He's just taking the power back to the state. This is like, oh, never mind. I'm not going to get into that. I was going to get into something else political that I'm not right now.
A roadblock there.
Yeah, and we'll see if this comes up at the shareholder meeting. Iger hasn't really talked about this too much. He did briefly bring this up during an employee town hall in January, saying there's still more research he had to do since the drama of this all happened before he came to take over the company.
Disney needs to stop being political. It's only going to make things worse for them.
However, there were several developments this week with the current oversight board. This was a board hand-selected by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, accusing the previous board of passing a last-minute agreement with Disney that created a loophole to essentially strip them of their power. Now, this last-minute bill was signed February 8th, so just one day before this new committee was appointed, and transferred much of the power to Disney. There was a copy of this agreement published by the Orlando Sentinel, and according to the document, Disney can veto any major changes to the parks. It prohibits the board from using Disney's name or characters like Mickey Mouse without the corporation's approval. And it also invoked something called a royal lives clause, which lives in perpetuity or until, quote, the death of the last survivor of the descendants of King Charles III, King of England, living as of the date of this declaration. This was...
What? Okay.
An actual quote in the agreement. Now, Disney gave a statement to the Associated Press saying all agreements signed between Disney and the district were appropriate. Yahoo Finance did reach out to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and Disney for comment, but it's yet to hear back.
Did you reach out to King Charles for comment?
I should have. I should reach out to the royals, get them involved. I mean, what does this mean for them coming to Disney? Maybe they'll get some free passes. Who knows?
Maybe. Red carpet for sure.
Exactly.
Ali Canal, thanks so much for breaking down all things Disney for us here today.
Okay, what the hell is
What's
that?
at stake for Disney and for CEO Bob Iger? Let's bring in insider chief media correspondent Claire Atkinson. Good to see you, Claire. Good to see you. Another week, another controversy about Disney. Disney can't stay out of the news. It's not always for really great.
It's
stuff.
never for good
Is
things.
it? Do you think Iger's got things back
Not
on
lately.
track though in general, but a lot of things on the horizon that he needs to deal with?
Absolutely. I mean, he's really undertaking something of a gut renovation of the Mouse House. As you mentioned, 7,000 people on the block. The company last week fired Ike Perlmutter, the chairman of Marvel. It let go of Kareem Daniels, the number 2 under Bob Chapek. A Marvel president.
Oh, I didn't hear about that. Kareem Daniels got fired too. Jesus.
Let go last week. There's a lot happening. As you mentioned, the biggest situation that Disney faces at the moment is down in Florida, where Ron DeSantis had essentially dissolved their tax authority. He had suggested that he wants his own people in there. Disney managed to maneuver to have that board that DeSantis was trying to dissolve, have them give power back to Disney. And under this King Charles clause, it seems that that's something that they can retain for a very long time. Ron DeSantis has said, I'm going to look into this. I think this is full of holes.
Yeah, King Charles clause seems like some malarkey to me.
we'll see where that takes us. As you mentioned, the shareholder meeting is coming up this afternoon. 2 years ago today, Bob Iger was discussing his departure from the company. The stock was at $195. Today, it's around $100. Shareholders are sure to be asking questions about succession. They're going to ask questions about the Don't Say Gay situation and the culture wars that
it's the parental rights in education bill. It's not Don't Say Gay. People keep giving it this false moniker, and it's really annoying.
created. And perhaps they're going to ask about China. A lot of shareholder meetings in the past, China's been a question that comes up. Disney executives are due to meet House congressional members this week and talk about what is the future between China and big American companies, and how can America really compete when it comes to artificial intelligence and be competitive with China when it comes to tech and media products. So there's a lot on the agenda.
Oh, they have an answer for that. It's called the restrict bill that they're trying to pass right now. Like they're claiming to want to restrict foreign enemies and other enemies, but if you read I was reading through it earlier, it basically gives them power to monitor and restrict anything online, any kind of platform, be it an individual or a company that they deem a threat to American stability, basically. So as long as you have the Secretary of Security and whatnot on board with it, if you have them in your pocket, you can do basically anything you want under this bill. If this passes, then yeah, things are just gonna get worse. Like we're gonna see more draconian laws enforced, and yeah, it's not a great time to have these lunatics in charge.
Today, I'm interested to hear what gets talked about.
I mean, the list of things you just went through in terms of, I mean, just Hulu and ESPN would be, you could have one CEO that you could spend all his time trying to figure that out. And then China, you could have a CEO trying to figure out a strategy there. And then we got to think about cultural issues and political issues.
I said restrict bill. It's the Restrict Act. That's what they're calling it. But yeah, it's a bill that they're trying to make into law. I really hope it doesn't pass.
Does the governor like us? I mean, it's a
TikTok is no worse than any other platform. They just want it gone because it's China that controls it, and that they want to be the ones that control all the information, and all the they basically want to be able to monitor you. They don't want anyone else monitoring you or selling your information or anything like that. They want to be the ones in control.
In that regard, I don't know if do you think that Iger is going to honor the most recent deadline for when he leaves? There's nobody on the horizon, is there?
So there's 18 months left.
I think we're going to get a Palpatine situation in here. He's going to be like, you guys need me in office a little longer. And then he stays in perpetuity.
To finding that successor. There's speculation that it could come internally, whether it is Dana Walden, who essentially kind of runs the TV side of the house, or whether it's Alan Bergman, who is running the film side. They're both co-chiefs of this new entertainment division. The company is being restructured to entertainment, sports, and parks and products, essentially. So could they be candidates? That's a question. Could Kevin Mayer, who was once a candidate for CEO, who was for a time the CEO of TikTok.
It's not going to be Victoria Alonso. We know that much now.
Now running his own production entity. Could he be in the fray? I think that's a question some people are asking. And as you mentioned, Hulu and ESPN, these are big topics. Will the company decide it's going to shed Hulu and put those proceeds, which could be as much as $18 billion, put it into ESPN Plus and make sure that that is, as Bob said, differentiated content. That's what the company is looking to do. Make sure it's not just general entertainment.
If they wanted to differentiate content, did they keep Hulu?
Everybody can stream. So,
Okay,
yes.
that's it. Oh, here's
I'm here
yeah,
in the Magic
here's also
Kingdom.
what I wanted to listen to. Oh crap! What did I do?
For a look at what's at
Not that
stake
one.
for
This
Disney.
I'm here in the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida.
There's Papa Iger Campia. John Campia loves calling him the.
We celebrate the company's 100th anniversary this year. I can't tell you how great it is to be back at Disney and to join you from this very special spot. This has always been one of my favorite places because it encapsulates so much of the vision and imagination that has entertained our audiences and guests for the past century. Just over 50 years ago, everything you see around me was remote pasture and swampland. And there were many who thought Walt's plans for this park were simply too ambitious. After all, Walt himself said building Walt Disney World would be the most exciting and
Damn you for using Walt to make us feel nostalgic, you bastard.
challenging assignment the company had ever tackled. And yet, thanks to those who dared to dream and those who dared to make those dreams into reality, here we are. When you're in a place like this, it's hard not to feel the childlike wonder captured in so much of what we do at Disney. Our parks are a place where everyone feels welcome. And
is this just going to be a fluff piece? What is this?
Being here, meeting our guests, some who are visiting for the first time, and others who first visited as children and are now bringing their own children and grandchildren, is an important reminder of what this company means to millions of people from every corner of the globe. We are so proud of
the company as it was before you guys took over.
Disney's legacy here in Central Florida, across America, and across the world. And that legacy dates back a century to October 1923, when two brothers from Marceline, Missouri, first began making their mark on the world. Countless companies have come and gone in the 100 years since. And yet, Disney remains the most cherished name in entertainment. And that's because of the profound impact our stories have had on people from all walks of life. Our stories have transcended generations and geographies. They've stood the test of time, and they've lived on and been reimagined through innovative new technologies and new generations of storytellers.
No, don't show us the live-action Lion King, no!
Creativity has always been the key to our success since the very beginning. And that's why, upon my return as CEO, we embarked on a significant transformation to restore creativity to the center of our company.
Yeah, because it's been sorely lacking. That's why we're saying restore it. He's admitting it.
Reorganization allows us to better maximize the potential of our world-class creative teams by giving them greater authority and accountability. We're also continuing to enhance
accountability. You heard that, folks. Accountability.
Streaming business and identifying opportunities
Make
to
good shit or get fired. I'm hoping that's what he means.
reduce expenses company-wide, all in an effort to position the Walt Disney Company for continued success in the future. There is no doubt that we face challenging times, but at my core, I'm an optimist, and I am incredibly bullish about what the future holds for Disney.
Oh, that looks terrible. Not her, just the CGI.
An unparalleled collection of brands and franchises generating world-class content from movies to television, sports to news. Storytelling is what powers this company, and our stories are reaching more audiences than ever before.
You knew they had to throw that little shit in there.
It was Walt who said Disneyland would continue to grow as long as there was imagination left in the world. And that's borne true for everything we do at the Walt Disney Company, especially at our parks. Let's take a look at some of what's underway. Welcome to our biggest new attraction.
A Tron ride. Still not going, but That sounds intriguing.
Here at Walt Disney World, Tron Light Cycle Run, which officially opens tomorrow.
Yeah, actually have like a simulation where you just like stick people in the actual game. Like that, I'd be down for that probably.
Disney made filmmaking history with the original Tron movie in 1982. It was the first production of its kind, mixing live action with computer-generated visuals. And this iconic film went on to become a fan favorite, inspiring video games, comic books, an animated series, and the 2010 feature, Tron Legacy.
That was a good movie. I'll admit, that was a great movie. I loved it.
The story's far from over. We introduced our first Tron attraction at Shanghai Disney Resort, and through the vision and creativity of our Imagineers, we're so thrilled to bring Tron to Walt Disney World. Guests will be able to climb aboard their very own light cycle and take off on a high-speed adventure, racing against the grid's most menacing programs. I've ridden this many times, and believe me, it's as thrilling as it looks. Meanwhile, at Disneyland, we just reopened Mickey's Toontown. This reimagination intentionally removed as many barriers to play as possible, giving families and young children more opportunities to enjoy this wonderful animated neighborhood. I was also just at Disneyland Paris.
I don't think I ever went to Toontown. I was very small when I went. I was like 8 something. I remember going to Animal Kingdom and loving that, and seeing very few of the characters walking around.
Where we've been celebrating the resort's 30th anniversary. The amazing new Avengers campus has been thrilling guests for almost a year now. On the other side of the world, at Shanghai Disney Resort, guests will soon be able to visit our Zootopia theme land, and you cannot believe the spectacular technological innovations we will unveil when this opens later this year.
Oh, so you still have good standing with China then, I guess? The Shanghai Disney is still up and running, and I guess China takes most of the take from that park. So yeah, I don't know what the deal is there. They're not wanting movies released there, but they still have their park, Disney's park. It seems like a love-hate relationship they have going on with China.
And meanwhile, audiences have absolutely loved our Zootopia Plus series on Disney Plus and Disney Animation
This is Zootopia series? I didn't know that.
Is hard at work on a Zootopia film sequel. At Tokyo Disney Resort, we're kicking off our 40th
Oh
anniversary.
yeah. He was talking about them being more creative going forward, and all they did was announce a bunch of sequels and reboots and shit. Like very creative.
Celebration later this month, where the new Frozen Kingdom, Rapunzel's Forest, and Peter Pan's Neverland will open next year. And
Is
guests at
Tinkerbell gonna be black? That's all I gotta know.
Hong Kong Disneyland will soon be able to visit the world's first Frozen-themed land, also set to open later this year. Our Imagineers never stop dreaming up bigger and bolder ideas. And that includes on the open sea.
Race swap Tarzan. I dare you, you cowards.
Where Disney Cruise Line continues to bring guests to incredible new destinations, like Lighthouse Point, which our Imagineers are bringing to life on a beautiful island in the Bahamas. We're also adding a 7th ship to our fleet, which will serve the Southeast Asia market, and we just announced that Singapore will serve as its home port. But I want to take you to another destination, and it is out of this world. Welcome to Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind here at Epcot, which opened less than a year ago. This outer space adventure has quickly become one of the most popular attractions at the resort. Now, the reason I wanted to bring you here, aside from how much I love this ride, is because I want to share this never-before-seen extended look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Here we go.
There's one thing I know. We are the greatest heroes in the universe.
We're not heroes. We're the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that looked cool.
I get the same old dreams, same time every night.
These guardians are more powerful than you think.
I will destroy them.
Who's the villain in this movie? I don't even know.
Oh, hell. Are you ready for one last ride? Hello, we call.
Somebody's gonna die in this. Either him or Rocket, I'm thinking, or both.
In peace.
Come on, Drax. Seriously, dude?
No!
I think this is the only movie that even has a chance of being good from Disney this year.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 opens in theaters on May 5th, and you can get your tickets to see this beloved band of misfits starting today. Now, just a couple of hundred yards from where I'm standing now, crews are hard at work putting the final touches on another big addition to Epcot, Journey of Water, inspired by Moana. This interactive trail will give our guests the opportunity to discover the key role water plays in our world, just as Moana did. Journey of Water also marks the completion of our spectacular transformation of Epcot as we conclude the 50th anniversary celebration of Walt Disney World. But Moana's journey doesn't stop here. And I've asked a friend to share some exciting news with you. Take a look.
Here we go.
Aloha, everyone, from beautiful Hawaii. We are here on the island of Oahu, where I did a lot of my growing up. As you know, Hawaii means so much to my family and me, and the traditions of our ohana, or ainga, as we say in Samoa, were shaped by these incredible islands. The Pacific Islands and their cultures inspired a very special story, one that you all know very well. And that story is, drum roll please, Moana! That's right. We are so excited and happy to announce that a live-action reimagining of Moana is in the works. Moana, Gramatala, the music, the dance, Te Fiti, Pua the pig, the village, the
Dude, it didn't take them long to announce a live-action Moana. Well,
powerful ocean, and one more, what's that guy's? Oh, yours truly, Hey Hey the chicken. Kidding, Hey Hey is gonna be in it, but of course Maui will be in it too. As many of you may not know, the brilliant team at Disney Animation,
so
my partners.
he's probably playing the live-action Maui. I'm taking a wild guess.
We found so much inspiration for Maui in the mana and the presence of my late grandfather, the legendary High Chief Peter Maivia. He would walk in, light up the room, the energy, the tattoos, the hair, the bod. When you're staring at a demigod. Thank you. Sorry, I get caught up in the moment. So as you guys can see, perfect timing as the sun comes out, just how deep this story is for me. Because in a way, when I bring Maui to life, I'm doing it in the spirit of my grandfather. So it's still very early in the process. There's so much more work to be done. But until then, there is one more thing that I need to kick this journey off right. Hey, girls, you want to get that special thing that Daddy needs? Wow, you guys are Daddy's daughters. You are so strong. Thank you guys so much. We're going to go in the ocean. Yes. Oh, look at the love I have. Is Daddy Maui?
No!
You guys want ice cream?
Yes!
See, so Daddy's Maui.
Oh, Lord. All respect to him and his family and his culture, but this is just, it just seems to me like him seeing his failure of Black Adam and saying, I gotta find another vehicle right now. What was I in that was kind of successful that caught on with people? Oh, Moana, okay. And then Disney, of course, has something. It's another company that he's worked for before, Jungle Cruise, and was Welcome to the Welcome to the Jungle wasn't Disney, but yeah, Jungle Cruise was the last one I think can think of. And then of course he was in the animated Moana. But yeah, this is anybody excited about this? Maybe a few girls out there. I don't know. The movie was okay. I thought Tangled was better, and better than Frozen too.
We're delighted to bring the story to life again in an exciting new way, and we can't wait for guests to experience Journey of Water right here at Epcot. Epcot has always been a place of inspiration and innovation. Walt envisioned Epcot as a way of offering an optimistic look at the future. He also understood that Disney has a role to play in creating a cleaner, healthier, and happier world, especially for children. And the philosophy behind Epcot extends into the communities where we operate. Today, our charitable giving, community engagement, workforce development, and commitment to responsible operations are built around the notion that Disney must always strive to be a good citizen of the world. Take our Heroes Work Here program, a company-wide initiative to hire, train, and support veterans. This effort reflects the long history of...
This is a good thing here, because you know what I'm sick and tired of seeing? Homeless veterans. They just, when you're driving by, going to work or something, you see a homeless person on the street with a sign saying, "Veteran, please, anything you can donate or give." It really makes me mad to see people who fought and died, or no, they fought for this country and might have died on the streets. Like, that's just pitiful. Meanwhile, I'm trying to be PG-13 here. Meanwhile, our government gives billions of dollars to foreign countries to fund their wars, and we can't take care of our own veterans. This is sad and pathetic.
Respect and appreciation Disney has.
Sorry, I just went on that rant. Sorry. But yeah, it just makes me mad. It irks me. Something awful.
Armed Services and has helped us hire more than 12,500 veterans since its inception. We're also incredibly proud of Disney Aspire, our education investment and career development program that pays 100% tuition upfront for full-time and part-time hourly employees. Since its launch, close to 13,000 cast members have taken part in Disney Aspire, helping them reach their goals and contributing to our strong pipeline of talent, including many of the over 77,000.
Well, paying 100% of the tuition, you don't hear that very often. For full-time and part-time employees, that's actually pretty good. But from what I hear, Disney's not a great company to work for, though. Like, the conditions and whatnot. Yeah, there's always a caveat to something that seems too good to be true.
Cast members who work here at Walt Disney World.
Of course, a lot of those employees now are probably getting laid off.
At Disney, we also believe nothing is more important than the happiness and well-being of children. And that's why we invest millions.
Are you sure about that? Are you sure about that?
Dollars each year in programs and initiatives focused on that basic but essential ideal. Walt's personal commitment to bringing our beloved characters to entertain children in hospitals has now grown into a...
You know who was good about doing that a lot? Without even Disney having to send him there? Johnny Depp. That dude would show up to hospitals all the time dressed like Captain Jack. Yeah. Like I said in another live stream, don't you miss him now?
$100 million initiative to help reimagine the patient experience in children's hospitals, delivering joy when it's needed most, including right here in Central.
People don't forget this shit, Disney. People don't forget.
Florida. Disney has also been a proud partner to Make-A-Wish since the very first wish was granted at Disneyland over 40 years ago. In fact, 1 out of every 2 wishes granted in the U.S. is a Disney wish, offering children facing critical illness joy, hope, and strength. And later this year, we will grant our 150,000th wish. We're proud of the positive impact we have on the world. And we're honored to tell great stories that billions of people have invited into their lives over the past 100 years. Our longevity
Just get back to actually honoring that, you know, not just saying it, like, do as you say.
Rooted in a strong foundation of creativity and the deep emotional connection that generations of fans have forged with our stories and characters. Audiences want to see themselves and the very best of humanity reflected in the stories that we tell. And that's why our on-screen heroes...
I think when people say, I want to see myself, they don't really mean, like, somebody that looks like me. Like, not superficially, you know, like Disney thinks, like, oh, okay, this black person, they want to see themselves. So we gotta put a black person in there. Like, we gotta swap out this character for another race. Like, just because we need that representation. It's like, why don't you instead create a new character, create a new story around them, instead of just, you know, piggybacking off of already established characters. People are starting to call this shit out because it's retarded and it's boring.
Are guided by kindness, understanding, respect, and optimism, and why Disney strives to incorporate those ideals into everything we do. It is such a privilege to be part of an institution that brings joy to so many people around the world, both to the young, and as Walt liked to say, to the young at heart. We're grateful to you, our shareholders, for your continued
Stop using Walt's quotes.
Confidence in our business and vision. And as we build on 100 years of creativity and forge a path into the future, I am confident that Disney's brightest days are yet to come.
All right, you guys. This guy, I don't know if you know much about Bob Iger. I have gone into a little bit before, but let me just get I have his book, The Ride of a Lifetime. I have it right here with me. Just hold on a second. Sorry about that. I had it on my shelf. It kind of blended in with with the other books. Like, it's got a dark cover. I was gonna look up this passage. It's a very telling passage because he goes into detail about, like, his working at Disney as the CEO, all the deals he made, shady deals, if you ask me. His dealings with Ike Perlmutter, his dealings with John Lasseter, and his dealings with George Lucas, Steve Jobs, everything. Michael Eisner, who was his boss before, and Yeah, there's a lot of I wouldn't say incriminating, but at least questionable choices he made. I mean, you know, choices that were good on paper, but in the long run, they haven't done well for that. Like they haven't actually made that money back that they paid for these IPs. Yeah. Yeah, here's the chapter on Star Wars. I might just read this whole damn thing out because it's very telling about like how he acquired Star Wars from George Lucas, how he acquired Lucasfilm. Yeah. Okay. In Bob Iger's own words, chapter 11 of The Ride of a Lifetime, Star Wars. I would have liked for Steve to have seen what our investment in Marvel turned into. He probably would have never cared much for the movies, although I think he would have appreciated how Black Panther and Captain Marvel flew in the face of industry shibboleths. But he would have been proud that he'd have been instrumental in bringing Ike around and that the brand had flourished so much under Disney. With every success the company has had since Steve's death, Steve Jobs, he's talking about, there's always a moment in the midst of my excitement when I think I wish Steve could be here for this. It's impossible not to have the conversation with him in my head that I wish I could be having in real life. In the summer of 2011, Steve and his wife, Lawrence, came to our house in LA to have dinner with Willow and me. He was in the late stages of cancer by then, terribly thin and in obvious pain. He had very little energy, and his voice was a low rasp. But he wanted to spend an evening with us, in part to toast what we'd done years ago. We sat in our dining room and raised glasses of wine before dinner. Look what we did, he said. We saved 2 companies. All 4 of us teared up. This was Steve at his warmest and most sincere. He was convinced that Pixar had flourished in ways that it never would have had it not become part of Disney, and that Disney had been re-energized by bringing on Pixar. I couldn't help but think of those early conversations and how nervous I was to reach out to him. It was only 6 years ago, but it seemed like another lifetime. He'd become so important to me, professionally and personally. As we toasted, I could barely look at Willow. She had known Steve much longer than I had, going way back to 1982, that's his wife, by the way, Steve Jobs' wife, when he was one of the young, brash, brilliant founders of Apple. Now he was gaunt and frail and in the last months of his life, and I knew how much it pained her to see him that way. He died on October 5th, 2011. Okay, I could probably skip all of this because it's not even to the George Lucas part yet. But yeah, it's pretty sad, though, his relationship with Steve Jobs. How he lost him. And I feel like that part was genuine, his feelings toward Steve Jobs. They kind of had a soft rivalry too, because, Steve Jobs at first was like a rival to Disney with the Apple and everything. But yeah, Steve said of him, he said, I love the guy, and he said the feeling was mutual. So cut to, when I went up to Cupertino to talk with Steve about Marvel, he asked if I was looking at anything else. I mentioned Lucasfilm, and he said, you should just call George. Steve had bought Pixar from George Lucas. Yeah, if you didn't know that, George Lucas was instrumental in creating Pixar. I mean, this guy was an innovator to the core. So Steve had bought it from George Lucas, and he and George had been close for years. You never know, he said. George might be interested. The 2 of us should go to his ranch and have lunch with him one day. We never did make that lunch. Steve soon became too sick, and his involvement in Disney's business waned. But Lucas had been at the top of our acquisition list ever since we completed the Marvel deal, and I've been thinking about how to approach George in a way that wouldn't offend him, with the suggestion that he sell us the marvelous worlds that he created. Michael Eisner had made a licensing agreement with George back in the mid-'80s to build Star Wars and Indiana Jones themed attractions at our parks. And in May 2011, we were reopening the Star Wars attractions, Star Tours they're called, in Disney World and Disneyland after a year-long refurbishing. I knew George was going to Orlando to rededicate the attraction as a favor to the company and its friends in Imagineering, and I decided to join him. Yeah, I think a lot of okay, I'm interjecting real quick. I think a lot of the people that worked on Star Wars ended up in Imagineering, and that's how George knew them. Okay. With the occasional exception, I normally leave the opening of new attractions to the head of parks and resorts, but I thought this might give me a chance to at least float the idea with George and get some sense of whether he'd be even consider selling to us. Our relationship went back to my days running ABC Entertainment. After the success of Twin Peaks, which Iger takes full credit for in this book, some of the most respected directors in Hollywood started expressing interest in making television series with us. I met with George and he pitched an idea for a show that would follow young Indiana Jones as he traveled around the world. Each episode will be a history lesson, George said. Indy would interact with historical figures like Churchill and Freud and Degas and Mata Hari. I gave him a very fast yes, and in 1992 we put the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles on Monday nights as a lead-in to Monday Night Football. The show opened to big numbers, but over time the audience lost interest in the historical lessons and ratings fell. But George had delivered everything he said he would, and I felt that because of that and because this was George Lucas, it deserved a second season and another chance to catch on with viewers. It never did, but George had been grateful at the time that I'd given the show that chance. On the day of the rededication of Star Tours in Orlando, I set up a breakfast with him at the Brown Derby, which was near the attraction in our Hollywood Studios park. The restaurant doesn't normally open before lunch, but I asked them to set up a table just for us so we would have privacy. When George and his fiancée Melody Hobson arrived, they were surprised to see that no one was there but me. We sat down and had a lovely breakfast, and about halfway through it, I asked George if he'd ever thought about selling. I tried to be clear and direct without offending him. He was 68 years old at the time, and I said, I don't want to be fatalistic, George, and please stop me if you would rather not have this conversation. But I think it's worth putting this on the table. What happens down the road? You don't have any heirs who are going to run the company for you. They may control it, but they're not going to run it. Shouldn't you determine who protects or carries on your legacy? I don't know how accurate that statement is, because George does have kids, does he not? He has a daughter, at least, who actually helped him on Clone Wars, like, write a bunch of the scripts and stuff. Like, she was instrumental in a lot of the Asajj Ventress storylines and stuff. I remember the behind the scenes of that, watching that. So, yeah, Bob Iger might be full of shit right here. I don't know. He nodded as I talked. I'm not really ready to sell, he said. But you're right. And if I decide to, he might be putting words into George's mouth right here. And if I decide to, there isn't anyone I want to sell to but you. He recalled young Indiana Jones and how much he appreciated that I'd given the show a chance, even when it didn't have the ratings. And then he brought up what we'd done with Pixar, which at some point Steve must have spoken to him about. You did that right, he said. You took care of them. If I get around to it, you're the only call I'll make. That's my best George Lucas, sorry. He said something else that I kept in mind in every subsequent conversation we had. When I died, the first line of my obituary is going to read Star Wars creator George Lucas. It was so much a part of who he was, which of course I knew, but having him look into my eyes and say it like that underscored the most important factor in these conversations. This wasn't negotiating to buy a business. It was negotiating to be the keeper of George's legacy, and I needed to be ultra sensitive to that at all times. Much to the chagrin of Kevin Mayer and some others at Disney who were lusting after Lucasfilm because, like Marvel and Pixar before it, it fit so perfectly into our strategy, I decided not to reach out to George after our discussion in Florida. If the conversation went forward, it would have to be because he decided he wanted it. I had such respect and affection for George, and I needed him to know that this was in his hands. So we will see how much respect he really had for George. Watch. So we waited. About 7 months after that breakfast, George called me and said, I'd like to have lunch to talk more about that thing we talked about in Orlando. We met for lunch at Disney in Burbank, and I let George lead the conversation. He quickly got down to business and said he'd been thinking about our conversation and was ready to get serious about selling. Then he said he wanted the Pixar deal. I was thrilled he was open to exploring an acquisition, but I understood what he meant by the Pixar deal, and it was immediately clear that the negotiation wasn't going to be easy. We already sensed Lucasfilm was potentially quite valuable for us, but it wasn't worth $7.4 billion, at least not based on our analysis at that point. Yeah, their analysis was way off, because Star Wars was worth more than $4 billion. In my mind, it was, at least before Disney acquired it. and cheapened it. The books were still selling like crazy. The comics, the freaking action figures. Merchandising. Just watch Spaceballs. You'll see. It's where the real money from the movie's made, as Mel Brooks so eloquently put it. When we were pursuing Pixar, there were 6 movies already in varying stages of production and a general sense of when they would be released. That meant they would generate revenue and profits quickly. Pixar also came with a big group of world-class engineers, seasoned directors, artists, and writers, and a real production infrastructure. Lucas had many talented employees, particularly on the tech side, but no directors other than George, and no film development or production pipeline as far as we knew. We'd done some work trying to figure out their value, and Kevin and I had discussions about what we might pay, but before they weren't a publicly traded company, their financial information wasn't accessible, and there was a lot we didn't know or couldn't see. Our analysis, you should have just looked at the toy sales, the comic sales, the book sales. Like, there's a lot of shit you could have looked at. Our analysis was built on a set of guesses, and from those we tried to build a financial model. Valuing their library of films and television shows, their publishing and licensing assets, their brand, which was dominated by Star Wars, and their special effects business, Industrial Light and Magic, which George had founded years earlier to provide the dazzling special effects for his films. We then projected what we might do if we owned them, which was pure conjecture. We guessed we could produce and release a Star Wars film every other year in the first 6 years after acquiring them. But it would take us time to get started since we didn't detect that anything was in development. Not true, there were things in development before Disney acquired Star Wars. There were video games such as 1313. There was an Underworld TV show that George was developing. He talked about it. It was in the news. All this is like retroactively trying to rewrite history because there were things in development. He's just leaving it out of the book. Other films would follow, and this analysis took place in early 2012, so we estimated our first Star Wars release would be in May 2015. Yeah, by the way, Clone Wars was still going on, and it was canceled because of this acquisition. Like, they were going to pump out more Star Wars, more Clone Wars. That's how come we got season 7 just recently on Disney Plus, because it was already planned before Disney acquired Star Wars. Other films would follow in 2017 and 2019. Then we estimated what the global box office of the films would bring in, which was even more conjecture since the last Star Wars film, Revenge of the Sith, I should know that by now, was released in 2005, 7 years earlier. Kevin gave me a collection of reviews from all of the previously released films and a rundown of what they earned, and we settled on at least $1 billion in global box office for our first 3 films. Next, we tackled their licensing business. Star Wars remained very popular with kids, particularly young boys who were still assembling Lego Millennium Falcons and playing with lightsabers. Also very popular with older men as well. I'm sticking that in there. Adding that licensing business to our consumer products business would be quite valuable, but we had no access to the actual revenue being generated from licensing. Lastly, we considered what we might do at our theme parks given the fact that we were already paying Lucasfilm for the rights to the Star Tours attractions in 3 of our locations. I had big dreams about what we might build, but we decided to ascribe little or no value to them because there were too many unknowns. In George's mind, Lucasfilm was as valuable as Pixar. It was. Maybe even more so. But even from our relatively uninformed analysis, they weren't. They might be someday, but it would take years of work to get it there, and we'd still have to make great films. I didn't want to offend him, but I didn't want to lead him on either. The worst thing you can do when entering into a negotiation is to suggest or promise something because you know the other person wants to hear it, only to have the reverse course later. Side note, that kind of comes later. You have to be clear about where you stand from the beginning. If I misled George simply to begin the bargaining process, which is what he does, or to keep the conversation going, it would ultimately backfire on me. So I said right away, there's no way this is a Pixar deal, George. And I explained why, recalling my visit to Pixar early on, and the richness of creativity that I discovered. Yeah, like there wasn't richness of creativity with George Lucas, who created Pixar, bitch! He was momentarily taken aback. I would be too. And I thought the discussions might end right there. Instead, he said, well, then what do we do? George, I'm getting sad already thinking about this. George, you don't make the deal. Like I could go back in time and make him stop the deal. I told him we needed to look closely at Lucasfilm and we needed his cooperation. We'd sign a confidentiality agreement and we would do it in a way that wouldn't raise too many questions within his company. We just need your CFO or someone who knows the financial structure to walk us through it, I said. I have a small team that will go in there and do it quickly. We'll keep it very quiet. Other than a few people, your employees won't know that we're snooping around. Yeah. Today, typically, the price we pay for assets doesn't vary much from what we believe the value to be in the first place. It's often possible to start low and hope to pay far less than what you're valuing an asset at, but in the process, you risk alienating the person you're negotiating with. I don't mess around when it comes to these things, I told George. We would quickly arrive at a number that we believed his company was worth, and one that I believed I could sell to the board, to our shareholders, and to Wall Street. And whatever that number was, I said, I'm not going to come in low and negotiate toward the middle. I'm going to do it the way I did it with Steve. George allowed us the access we needed, but at the end of that process, we still found ourselves struggling to settle on a firm valuation. A lot of our concern had to do with how to assess our own ability to begin making good movies, and quickly. We hadn't begun to form a long-term creative vision because we had no creative people assigned to the task. We had nothing, really, which meant there was a lot of creative risk, and hitting the schedule we'd set for ourselves, and which our financial analysis was based on, would be daunting and maybe impossible. If reading this, okay, to interject again, reading this makes me think, how stupid were you not to look at what the EU had done for Star Wars? It had kept it alive. It created new characters like Mara Jade, Borsfalia, Talon Card, Thrawn. Oh my god. You could have just adapted those novels. Like, you had stories there already that you could have used. You just give the writers royalties. That's all you had to worry about by making these movies. But instead, you decided to piss it away, say, okay, none of this is canon. We're just going to come up with our own shit. And then you just make up stuff on the fly without having a plan. Okay, I'm gonna go on a rant again on Star Wars. I'm trying to keep it together. Trying to get through this passage. Continuing, I eventually called George and told him we had narrowed it down to a price range, and we still needed time to home in on a specific price. It would be between $3.5 billion and $3.75 billion. George had come way down from his Pixar price, but I could tell he was not going to accept anything lower than Marvel, which, yeah, Marvel was acquired at $4 billion. I met with Kevin and his team, and we looked at our analysis again. We didn't want to falsely raise our box office estimates, but even at the top end of the range I'd given George, there was some room for us to pay more, though it would put a lot more pressure on the timing and performance of the films. Could we make 3 in 6 years? These were Star Wars films, and we would have to be very careful. No shit, and you weren't careful enough in the long run. Ultimately, Kevin and I decided we could afford $4.05 billion, or slightly above what we pay for Marvel, and George immediately agreed. Then the more difficult negotiations began over what George's creative involvement would be. In Pixar's case, the entire acquisition was predicated on John and Ed's continued involvement, not just with Pixar, but with Disney Animation. John became Chief Creative Officer. Yeah, that's John Lasseter and, I forget the other guy's name, Ed something. But John Lasseter was the main guy behind Pixar, who Disney canceled for hugging people. So John became Chief Creative Officer, but he still reported to me. With Marvel, I'd met with Kevin Feige and the rest of their team, and I knew what they had in the works, and we'd begun collaborating closely to determine the future of Marvel films. With Lucas, there was only one person with creative control, George. He wanted to retain that control without becoming an employee. It would have been a dereliction of my responsibilities to spend more than $4 billion and then say, essentially, this is still yours. Go ahead and make whatever movies you want to make on whatever timeline you can make them. No, Iger. Let me interject again. You want to keep the creative in the process of making these movies. You want to keep the guy around to consult on this world that you know nothing about and the people that work under you know nothing about. Because he's the one who created the shit. He's the one with the authority. He's the one with the know-how. He's the whole reason you were able to make this deal to begin with. You're piggybacking off of his creation. Okay. Let me try to get through this. Few people in the film business commanded as much respect as George. Star Wars had only ever been his. No matter how much he understood intellectually that he was selling the company and it didn't make sense that he would retain creative control, his entire self was wrapped up in the fact that he was responsible for what was perhaps the greatest mythology of our time. That's a hard thing to let go, and I was deeply sensitive to that. The last thing I wanted to do was insult him. Just wait for it. I also knew we couldn't spend this money and do what George wanted, and that saying that to him would put the whole deal at risk. That is exactly what happened. Okay, so from then on, you'll see what happens. He lets George think that George is going to retain creative control, and then he rips it out of his hands. Watch. We agreed to a price quickly, but then we negotiated back and forth for several months over what his role would be. It was difficult for him to cede control of the ongoing Star Wars saga, and it made no sense for us not to have it. We went over and over the same ground. George saying he couldn't just hand over his legacy, me saying we couldn't buy it and not control it, and twice walked away from the table and called the deal off. I would have called it off like the first time that happened. We walked the first time and George walked the second. At some point in the process, George told me that he had completed outlines for 3 new movies. He agreed to send us 3 copies of the outlines, one for me, one for Alan Braverman, and one for Alan Horn, who'd just been hired to run our studio. Alan Horn and I read George's outlines and decided we needed to buy them, though we made clear in the purchase agreement that we would not be contractually obligated to adhere to the plot lines he'd laid out. It was an upcoming change in capital gains laws that eventually salvaged the negotiations. If we didn't close the deal by the end of 2012, George, who owned Lucasfilm outright, would take a roughly $500 million hit on the sale. Let that sink in for a moment. He was going to lose $500 million if he didn't make the deal by the end of 2012. So they essentially extorted him. They essentially strong-armed him into making the deal. If he was going to sell to us, there was some financial urgency to come to an agreement quickly, like I said. He knew that I was going to stand firm on the question of creative control, but it wasn't an easy thing for him to accept, and so he reluctantly agreed to be available to consult with us at our request. I promised that we would be open to his ideas. This was not a hard promise to make. Of course, we would be open to George Lucas's ideas. Yeah, sure you were. But like the outlines, we would be under no obligation. Yeah, they took his outlines and they threw them in the trash. No telling if we'll ever see these. They're under lock and key at Disney. Hopefully some brave soul will leak them one day. The script to Duel of the Fates, that was going to be episode 9 by what's the guy? Colin Trevorrow, who did Jurassic World. His script, Duel of the Fates, that leaked, and that was actually pretty good. Better than what we got. So hopefully someday we'll actually get to see what George had in mind. I've heard that since he brought Darth Maul back, that he was going to be the main villain in the last one. I don't know. In the sequel trilogy, I have no idea. On October 30th, 2012, George came to my office and we sat at my desk and signed an agreement for Disney to buy Lucasfilm. He was doing everything he could not to show it, but I could tell in the sound of his voice and the look in his eyes how emotional it was for him. He was signing away Star Wars after all. Yeah, you can watch that video and see George's face and see the defeat, the despondency on his face. He knows he's making a deal with the devil, but he had little choice. He would have lost a shit ton of money if he didn't go through with the deal. This is why people are like Anna, that Star Wars girl. She calls Bob Iger the real life Lex Luthor because of deals like this that he makes. Because he sold out George Lucas to get Star Wars, and they've essentially flushed it down the drain. This was the most popular IP in the world, besides like Pokemon. Pokemon's still the highest selling IP in the world, but like Star Wars was up there, man. Star Wars was the cash cow of cash cows. Like you couldn't go into a store and not see Star Wars merchandise everywhere. Because this shit was popular with not just men but women too. Like I know a lot of women who are Star Wars fans, and Disney has just destroyed this IP. It's that's why you see a lot of clickbait videos like mine that say Star Wars is dead, because it's true. We feel it. Like, look at the ratings on Mandalorian gone down. This was their flagship show on Disney Plus, and the ratings have gone down because people realize it's shit now. They keep pissing away the goodwill they had. Okay. It continues. A few months before we closed the deal, George hired the producer Kathy Kennedy to run Lucasfilm. Big mistake. Kathy had confounded Amblin Entertainment along with her husband. Oh, co-founded. Confounded. I mean, that could be true too. She definitely confounded Star Wars fans. Along with her husband Frank Marshall and Steven Spielberg, who have produced E.T. and the Jurassic Park franchise and dozens of critical and commercial hits. It was an interesting move on George's part. We were on the verge of buying the company, but he suddenly decided who was going to run it and ultimately produced the upcoming films. It didn't upset us, but it did come as a surprise, just as it surprised Kathy to learn that the company she was agreeing to run was about to be sold. Kathy is a legendary producer, and she has been a great partner, and this was one final way for George to put someone in whom he trusted to be the steward of his legacy. God damn, he put the trust in the wrong person, man. Fuck. The deal closed at the end of 2012, and Kathy, Alan, and I began searching for a creative team. Yeah, George, for all his creative genius, George didn't have the right. Didn't have enough. I don't know. He doesn't have the best judgment when it comes to people and their character. Unfortunately, because the people he's doing dealings with are terrible people. We eventually convinced J.J. Abrams, Jar Jar Abrams, to direct our first Star Wars movie and hired Michael Arndt, who'd written Toy Story 3 and Little Miss Sunshine, to write the script. JJ and I had dinner soon after he decided to take on the project. We'd known each other from back in the ABC days. He'd made Alias and Lost for us, among other things, and it was important to me to sit down and acknowledge what we both knew, that the stakes on this project were higher than anything either of us had ever done before. I joked at some point during dinner that this was a $4 billion movie, meaning that the whole acquisition depended on its success, which JJ later told me wasn't funny at all. Because it's true. I know how he appreciated that I had as much skin in this one as he did, though, and we could share the burden of what it meant to be responsible for the first Star Wars film not made by George Lucas. There were other Star Wars films not made by George Lucas. Irvin Kershner directed Empire Strikes Back, and what's his name? Shit, he did Return of the Jedi. Mark Wayne. Richard Mark Wayne. That's neither here nor there. In all of our, if he knew anything about Star Wars, he would know this shit. In all of our interactions, from initial conversations about how the myth should unfold to visits to the set and in the editing room, I tried to communicate to JJ that I was a partner in the project and not just a CEO putting pressure on him to deliver a great film and a big box office success. There was more than enough pressure to go around for both of us. and I wanted him to feel that he could call me at any moment to discuss any problem he was wrestling with, and that I would call him with ideas that I had. I was a resource for him and a collaborator, but not someone who needed to put my stamp on this film out of vanity or title or obligation. Luckily, we have similar sensibilities and tastes, and we mostly agree on what was problematic, and what was working. Over the lengthy development and production process in Los Angeles and then at the Pinewood Studios in London and Iceland and Scotland and in Abu Dhabi, JJ proved to be a great collaborator and never lost sight of the enormity of the project or the tremendous burden it carried. With George, with Star Wars fans. Like you ever gave a shit about what Star Wars fans think. With the press and with our investors. Yeah, they mostly worry about the press. It seems like they don't worry about what George thinks, obviously. And the investors, like they've been losing the investors' money with their stupid decisions. There's no rule book for how to manage this kind of challenge. But in general, you have to try to recognize that when the stakes of a project are very high, there's not much to be gained from putting additional pressure on the people working on it. Projecting your anxiety onto your team is counterproductive. It's subtle, but there's a difference between communicating that you share their stress, that you're in it with them, and communicating that you need them to deliver in order to alleviate your stress. No one on this project needed reminding of what was at stake. My job was to not let us lose sight of our ambition when we confronted creative and practical obstacles, and to help us get to solutions in the best possible way. Sometimes that meant allocating more resources. Sometimes it meant talking through new drafts of the script, or watching endless dailies and numerous cuts of the film. Often it just meant reminding JJ and Kathy Kennedy and Alan Horn that I believed in all of them, and there were no better hands for this film to be in. That's not to say it was a smooth ride from the start. Early on, Kathy brought JJ and Michael Arndt up to Northern California to meet with George at his ranch and talk about their ideas for the film. George immediately got upset as they began to describe the plot, and it dawned on him that we weren't using one of the stories he submitted during the negotiations. I can't believe he wasn't surprised. I mean, I guess he didn't watch enough TV shows. Poor George. Shit. The truth was, Kathy, JJ, Allen, and I had discussed the direction in which the saga would go, and we all agreed that it wasn't what George had outlined. George knew we weren't contractually bound to anything, but he thought that our buying the story treatment was a tacit promise that we'd follow them. And he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. I would be too. I'd been so careful since our first conversation not to mislead him in any way. Yeah, sure you were. And I didn't think I had now, but I could have handled it better. I should have prepared him for the meeting with JJ and Michael and told him about our conversations, that we felt it was better to go in another direction. I could have talked through this with him and possibly avoided angering him by not surprising him. Now, in the first meeting with him about the future of Star Wars, George felt betrayed, and while this whole process would never have been easy for him, we'd gotten off to an unnecessarily rocky start. Yeah, this is why. Okay, interjecting real quick because there's a break in the passage. This is why you see there's an interview with George where he calls Disney white slavers. That's because he was so embittered by this experience with them. That's why. Because they, they bought his baby and he could see they were going in the wrong direction with it. There were other struggles on top of George's feelings about the film. Michael wrestled with the screenplay for months, and eventually JJ and Kathy made the decision to replace him with Larry Kasdan, aka Lawrence Kasdan, who'd co-written The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi with George, as well as Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Big Chill, and many others. Larry and JJ completed a draft fairly quickly, and we began shooting in the spring of 2014. Yeah, fairly quickly because it was basically a copy and paste of A New Hope. We'd originally planned to release the movie in May 2015, but because of those early script delays and some other complications later on, we didn't release it until December. This moved it out of our 2015 fiscal year and into our 2016 fiscal year. My presentation to the board prior to the acquisition and our disclosures to investors assuring them that we would begin to see a return on investment in 2015 turned out not to be true. Hundreds of millions of dollars moved out of one fiscal year and into the next. This was not a huge deal, but it had to be dealt with. See, this is the problem. when IPs, well, when creative endeavors become corporatized, this becomes a problem because investors are waiting for returns on their investments, and you're trying your hardest to create something in a very short window of time. So you're feeling pressured, so you start just churning out shit. We've seen that just recently with the Marvel shows and the Disney Star Wars shows. They're just pumping out stuff that is not well written, it's not well acted, anything directed. The CGI looks like crap. The effects are crap. It's just gotten out of hand. So one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen film studios make is getting locked into a release date and then letting that influence creative decisions. Yeah, just like I said, often rushing movies into production before they're ready. I've tried hard not to give in to calendar pressures. It's better to give up a release date and keep working to make a better movie. And we've always tried to put quality before everything else, even if it means taking a short term hit to our bottom line. In this case, the last thing we wanted to do was put out a movie that didn't live up to the expectations of Star Wars fans. Right. The Star Wars fan base is so passionate. You got that right, pal. And it was vital that, well, it used to be anyway. What's left of it, it's kind of passionate, but like I said, they're fickle. And if you criticize anything, they'll call you names. I don't like the rest of the fan base. I'm out. I'm out. Like I'm out. This is why I left the book lounge group that I was in because they're toxic. Like that's all you have left are toxic fans. You wanted this, Disney. You were pandering to the wrong crowd. The Star Wars fan base is so passionate, and it was vital that we give them something they loved and felt worthy of their devotion. If you were that worried about it, you would have used George's treatment. Like people would have felt like you were honoring his legacy by using his treatment. In hindsight, that was a big mistake, just discarding that draft. Especially given what we were given. A fucking copy and paste, like I said, of A New Hope. Last Jedi was just subvert expectations, the movie. And then Rise of Skywalker was a gobbledygook mess with contrivances all around. This stupid dagger. Like, what the fuck? And somehow Palpatine returned. Right, yeah. Okay. Oh my god, what the fuck? If we didn't get that right on our first Star Wars film, we'd suffer a breach of trust with our audience that would be very hard to recover from. Yeah, I was caught up in the hype for Force Awakens. I loved it when it came out. I was intrigued by the characters. I wanted to follow the characters like Finn, especially. I thought his story was interesting. A stormtrooper who becomes a rebel? That's pretty cool, actually. He might become a Jedi. Like they were teasing that with him grabbing the lightsaber and everything. Like they had it on the posters, so we were led to believe he would become a Jedi. Then they sidelined him in the sequels. So yeah, that kind of put me off. And then Rey, we never got much of her character. Like, okay, she's a scavenger. Her parents were like nobodies, I guess, or they could have been somebody. We kept being teased like she might have more of a heritage than we're led to believe. We kept getting jerked around, like so. Yeah, with their Lucasfilm jerking us around, all these theories were formed. Like Snoke, who's Snoke? I kept thinking maybe he was Darth Plagueis or Saint Pistage, the advisor of Palpatine, and who shows up in Return of the Jedi. You know, the guy in the purple. I kept thinking he was either one of those two characters, and then it turned out to be neither. I remember Pablo Hidalgo talking about your Snoke theory sucks. Like he put that on Twitter or something. Like he would make fun of the fans. Pablo Hidalgo is one of the toxic people that at Lucasfilm that they really need to get rid of. Like him and Kathy Kennedy, they're like a cancer. But moving on, just prior to the global release, Kathy screened The Force Awakens for George. He didn't hide his disappointment. There's nothing new, he said. Obviously, there's nothing new. Like I said, it was A New Hope remade, basically. You still got your sand planet. You still got your droid delivering plans to a super weapon to somebody. You still got a trench run at the end. See, am I coming through? If you haven't noticed, yeah. You still have the old mentor dying at the end too. Basically, a tread for tread, retread of A New Hope. So George was not lying when he said there's nothing new. In each of the films in the original trilogy, it was important to him to present new worlds, new stories, new characters, and new technologies. And that's true. With every movie, he presented something new. In A New Hope, we had the desert planet. In Empire Strikes Back, starts off on an ice planet, and then you even get a swamp planet. And then Bespin in the same movie is a gas giant planet. It's just a floating city in the middle of this gas cloud city. Then cut to Return of the Jedi. You get a forest planet, Endor. Well, it's a moon, but yeah, the forest moon of Endor. And well, back to Tatooine first because they had to deal with Jabba. But then, yeah, the forest planet with the Ewoks. You get new characters, new creatures, new worlds in every movie. The prequels, you get Naboo, which is pretty much like Earth, only you have these other creatures. The Gungans are introduced. You get new droids introduced in this prequel. Other aliens like Watto is introduced. Yeah, a lot of new things. The Jedi Council, they're very diverse so far as aliens go. Like, you got Apo Rancisis, Uriel Poof, all crazy looking creatures. Stacey Tian, and then in Attack of the Clones, you get the water planet Camino. It's just covered in water and it's constantly raining. Like, that was an interesting concept that George Lucas came up with. Like, every movie, he would come up with new freaking concept. Like Geonosis, an entire planet that's like desert, but then it has these colonies of insectoid creatures called Geonosians. It's just man, he's such a creative genius. Like every freaking time he came out with a new story, it was more new things, more interesting things. Then we got Revenge of the Sith with the lava planet Mustafar. That I think was the best one actually. I love that whole thing. And Utapau, it's a planet full of sinkholes. every see that might be the problem with Disney. Like, George had already done pretty much everything in his movies, so they couldn't think of anything because they're not creative at all. Oh, Felucia is another one. It's covered in this rich, luscious plant life. Really, a lot of weird plant life. It's beautiful to look at. I'm glad they showed it in the Revenge of the Sith. Though briefly, I wish we'd have got more of it, but yeah, it was great to see. Then Kashyyyk, of course, covered in these huge trees, forest planet of the Wookiees. Yeah, we got to see a shit ton of worlds and different environments in George's movies, as opposed to how many hours of Disney Star Wars we've gotten. We've gotten faux Tatooine in Jakku, just another desert planet, generic desert planet. We've gotten back to Coruscant a few times. That's another one. Coruscant was the best, I think. The whole city, the whole planet is a city. I thought that was an amazing idea. Which I think it was first mentioned in one of the novels, and then he incorporated it into the movies. Center of the galaxy, center of commerce, center of the government, everything, Coruscant. And then, yeah, so Disney has brought us there a couple of times in Andor, I believe, in I think Mando. But yeah, Navarro. What's special about Navarro? Nothing really. It's like another pirate hole kind of planet. Trying to think of the new places we've been. That's the only one I can think of. Jakku, Navarro, Hasnian Prime. I think they showed that briefly. That was the place that blew up in The Last Jedi, I think. This is where the government was after. See, we haven't gotten a lot explained, really, like why the government was on Hasnian Prime and not Coruscant anymore. And also, what else? Trying to think. Oh, Canto Bight, the casino place. Yeah, that didn't go over well. Yeah, Disney Star Wars really has not come out with anything new, really innovative, except for the volume thing, which people are already kind of getting tired of. They're like, can you go back to practical? Like, like we can tell this is fake now. It was cool, like, as a new thing for a little while. Now it's like, you're overusing it. Ant-Man 3, it's very noticeable because it's just a bunch of CGI gobbledygook. Like, come on. All right, to continue. Okay, so George was disappointed. He said, "There's nothing new here." You know, in this one, he said there weren't enough visual or technical leaps forward. Yeah, with every movie too, he was making technical visual leaps. He was always innovating. Yep. And Iger even admits he wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't appreciating the pressure we were under to give ardent fans a film that felt quintessentially Star Wars. That doesn't mean, quote unquote, never mind. I'm just saying, that doesn't mean you just remake the damn movie. Jesus. All you had to do was put Han, Luke, and Leia together. Man, that's all you had to do. Been $3 billion. I swear, people would have gone to see it more times than they went to see Force Awakens. Like, have them go on an adventure together. Make it about the old characters. The new characters, they can come later. Like, you pass off the baton, whatever you want to do, whatever the fuck. But focusing on the new characters and then not even developing them, that was stupid. Like, you have these characters already that you could use. Why are you just sidelining them? Like R2 and 3PO, they were barely in it too. And they played like little or no role at all. We'd intentionally created a world that was visually and tonally connected to the earlier films, to not stray too far from what people loved and expected, and George was criticizing us for the very thing we were trying to do. Yeah, but can you not blame him? I mean, can you blame him? Really? Can you blame him? Looking back with the perspective of several years and a few more Star Wars films, I believe JJ achieved the near impossible, creating a perfect bridge between what had been and what was to come. Yeah, they're constantly making excuses. God damn. On top of George's reaction, there was a lot of speculation in the press and from diehard fans about how we were going to Disneyfy Star Wars. As with Marvel, I made the decision not to put Disney anywhere in the film credits or the marketing campaigns, and to not in any way change the Star Wars logo. I kind of missed the 20th Century Fox opening fanfare. Disney Pixar made sense from an animation branding perspective, but Lucas fans needed to be reassured that we too were fans first, respectful of the creator and looking to expand on its legacy, not usurp it. Even though he had issues with the film, I thought it was important for George to be at the Force Awakens premiere. He didn't want to come at first, but Kathy, with the help of George's now wife, Melody Hobson, convinced him it was the right thing to do. Among the last things we negotiated before the deal closed was a non-disparagement clause. Okay, see, that's why George hasn't come out and shit on Disney Star Wars, because he was told not to in his contract. I still think it was funny though that he called Disney white slavers. That might have been, yeah, regardless of anything to do with Star Wars, he probably was told not to talk about, but like anything else was fair game. I'm guessing that was in the clause. Like Star Wars exclusive, Disney Lucasfilm exclusive. I asked George to agree that he wouldn't publicly criticize any of the Star Wars films we made. Yeah, see there. Probably expected that. And don't worry, bro. The fans will always call you out on your shit. They will always tell you when something is not working, when it makes no sense, when it's stupid. When I brought it up with him, he said, I'm going to be a big shareholder of the Walt Disney Company. Why would I disparage you or anything you do? You have to trust me. I took him at his word. And that's right. He is a big shareholder of Disney still. So that's partly why he hasn't, come out and said, all this stuff is shit. Like, he's just sitting there with his popcorn on his pile of money right now, I'm sure. Like, George has by and large retired, I think, by this point. The question now was how to handle the premiere. I wanted the world to know that this was JJ's movie and Kathy's movie, and it was our first Star Wars movie. It certainly was by far the biggest film we've released since I became CEO. We held a gigantic premiere in the Dolby Theater where the Academy Awards take place. I went on stage first, and before I brought JJ and Kathy out with me, I said, "We're all here because of one person who created the greatest mythology of our time and then entrusted it to the Walt Disney Company." George was in his seat. He got a long, rapturous standing ovation, as well he should have. Willow was sitting in the row behind him and took a wonderful picture of him, surrounded by a few thousand people, all on their feet. I was happy to look at it later and see how pleased and grateful George was at the outpouring of admiration for him. Oh, by the way, I got that wrong earlier. Willow is, I think, Bob Iger's wife, not Steve Jobs. Yeah, that's Bob Iger's. The movie opened and set a slew of box office records, and we all breathed a sigh of relief. Yeah, Willow was more friends with Steve Jobs, I think, than even Bob Iger was. That's why she was so torn up when he died. Our first Star Wars film was behind us, and the Star Wars faithful appeared to have loved it. Shortly after the release, though, an interview George had done a few weeks earlier with Charlie Rose aired. Yeah, there it is. George talked about his frustration that we hadn't followed his outlines and said that selling to Disney was like selling his children to white slavers. It was an unfortunate and awkward way for him to describe the feeling of having sold something that he considered his children. I decided to stay quiet and let it pass. There was nothing to be gained from engaging in any public discourse or waging a defense. Melody sent me an apologetic email explaining how difficult this had all been for him. Then George called me. I was out of line, he said. I shouldn't have said it like that. I was trying to explain how hard it is to let this thing go. I told him I understood. 4.5 years earlier, I'd sat with George at breakfast and tried to convey that I knew how difficult this would be for him, but that when he was ready, he would trust me. All the negotiations, all over the money, and then over the question of his ongoing involvement with Star Wars, were exercises in balancing my respect for what George had done and how deeply personal I knew this was for him. Yeah, you had no idea how personal this was for him. With my responsibility to the company. I could empathize with George, but I couldn't give him what he wanted. At every step of the way, it was necessary to be clear about where I stood, while being sensitive toward how emotional the entire process was for him. Looking back on the acquisitions of Pixar, Marvel, and Lucasfilm, the thread that runs through all of them, other than that taken together, they transformed Disney, is that each deal depended on building trust with a single controlling entity. There were complicated issues to negotiate in all of the deals, and our respective teams spent long days and weeks reaching agreement on them. But the personal component of each of these deals was going to make or break them, and authenticity was crucial. You've lost that. Steve had to believe my promise that we would respect the essence of Pixar. Ike needed to know that the Marvel team would be valued and given the chance to thrive in their new company, and George had to trust that his legacy, his baby, would be in good hands at Disney. Well, as we've seen, that's the end of the passage. As we've seen in recent years, Disney could not be trusted with this IP. not under these people. It's all gone awry. Like I feel like Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm was like the what do you call it? The flashpoint. Like we skewed into this shitty timeline, and we can't go back. Like somebody's got to go back and stop him from selling. Man, frick. Okay. On that happy note.
Screw you guys. I'm going home. But Carmen, we're trying to. Screw you guys.